Welcome, everyone, back to another episode of the EUVC Podcast. This is one where we're diving into the future of European defense tech with a founder who truly understands the front line, Stefan Roebel, the CEO and co-founder of ARX Robotics. If you've been watching the shift toward dual-use tech, autonomy, and European tech sovereignty, this one is for you. We'll unpack how ARX is transforming land warfare with modular robotics, why Europe must lead in defense innovation, and how this startup is already making waves across NATO and Ukraine. As always, we do this for the ecosystem, so let's go deep, let's go together. Before we start the show, a quick note. If you're building or running a fund, you know it takes the right partners. At EUVC, we only work with sponsors we truly believe should be part of your tech stack. Please do take a moment to hear about them. And if you do, reach out, mention EUVC. It's the best way you can support what we do. Thank you so much. First up, ACE Alternatives. Every fund manager needs clean operations behind the scenes. From fund admin to tax and compliance, ACE handles it all across VC, PE, private debt, and real assets. They're trusted by some of the best investors in the world, and if you want peace of mind and a scale-ready back office, ACE should be part of your stack. Finding deals and managing your portfolio is at the heart of running a fund. Synaptic helps you discover startups before others do, and Portfolio IQ keeps your portfolio data sharp and ready for LPs. Together, they're essential tools for modern fund managers. When it comes to legal, you need a team that truly knows venture. Haynes Boone supports LPs, GPs, startups, and scale-ups across the full fund lifecycle. Smart managers make Haynes Boone part of their stack. We have two at EUVC. Tech Barbecue. Oh my God, who doesn't love barbecue? Europe's startup scene meets the loudest, friendliest family reunion ever at Tech Barbecue. From Nordic founders to global VCs, this is where ideas catch fire and relationships get real. If you're building or backing in Europe, Tech Barbecue is where you want to show up. And hey, if you've got a big fun announcement coming up, want to hit the headlines, or just want to tell your story out, do reach out to us because we'd love to help. And we've got some killer partners to help you get in the right media places. They've helped us land Bloomberg, CNBC, Financial Times, Forbes, and many more for the EUVC Summit, and we'd love to do the same for you.
This was their finest hour.
Tear down this wall.
It's more than just an alliance. This is a union of values.
Let's start acting.
This show is not investment advice, and the hosts of this episode may be invested in the funds and companies featured.
Welcome, Stefan. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Before we dive into all the details, can you just walk us through the founding story of ARX Robotics and what sparked your decision to build in the defense tech space?
There's two sides to the story. That's a personal one. So myself being a service member for 12 years, I've been deployed to Afghanistan and spent some time in the US with the armed forces. Officially retired 2012, then did a little detour to e-commerce, worked for Amazon and eBay, led the European operation at ASOS, and then worked for Grover for a fintech startup based out of Berlin from Series A to unicorns. I've done a little detour, but I still have this military background, right? Long story short, so my Benjamin Button career from big corporates to startups ended with a dinner meeting Mark on a Thursday afternoon. Both really tired, not really motivated. Mark was on the lookout for a co-founder. I was negotiating with my wife if early stage startup would be something we would be okay to do because there's no money, no nothing. If you worked in business for 12 years and living with family, you already have a little bit of, economic standard you need to, maintain to whatever agree. I made a deal with my wife that I have 12 months on good German unemployment money to find something that generates revenue. So I was looking for something more like seed, Series A, pre-seed stage, proof of concept. So in between appointments, one of the headhunters I worked with said, okay, meet Mark, he's great. I said, okay, fine. I said, Thursday late afternoon, Mark tired, I was tired. But then we clicked right away, right? We talked for 3 hours, how outdated the equipment is we use in Europe and how much work needs to be done to turn this around. Even though I was out of the armed forces for 12 years, it still clicked, right? I still understand military language. At the same time, being with major global companies for the last, decades, I have some experience building companies, and I've seen, I have more data points of what really goes well and what goes not so well. So that obviously helps with an early stage startup. So that was a good balance between, okay, I can add value here with my experience, but I still have the resilience to hopefully survive early stage startup life, which is insane. And for Mark, the journey began like 2021. Mark is an infantryman, same for Max, our third co-founder. And in infantry, there's a problem. If you defend a house, usually you're outnumbered by your adversaries. So what you do is you try to find a broomstick or any stick, usually a broomstick, and then you paint the tip of the broomstick black so it looks like a gun. And you put it in the window, right? And in the dark, it looks like a gun, and people are, oh no, what it is. And if you're lucky, you really deter the enemy, and you get away with it. So what Mark did in 2021 is to make the broomstick digital. So what he did is he used the JBL box, glued a metal pin on one edge, and then used a part of soft air with the light signal. So whenever you push the sound of a shotgun or shot through the JBL box, the bus mover would move and then pushes the metal pin through to a gate that flashes then the tip of the soft air gun. So it looks like a shot, it sounds like a shot. And then he used, from a discotheque, a small smoke machine to trigger a small smoke. So it actually had a 3D effect of a real gun being placed in a house. So, and he won an award with this invention back then. And the question was, how do we make this thing mobile, right? It's good to have it in the window, okay, quite stationary, okay. Can we make this mobile? And he built the first robot somewhere in 2022. And then things started to click. So, okay, this is nothing we've ever seen. Is there more? And of course there was more, but he used his own money to fund the first prototypes. And then at the stage, he was part of the early stage studio program of Project A. And part of it was, okay, we need to find a co-founder that has business experience, but still understands defense. And there is not many of us that are willing to go back to like really early stage startup life. So we met, he told me the story. He told me the outlook. He wants to transform the training and simulation, but also he wants to revolutionize, ideally, the way we operate in the armed forces. And this is just the beginning, then commercial. So he was really like this think big person, high energy, whatever it takes kind of guy that I was looking for. So I got hooked, got back, talked to my wife, told her all the options I found on my trips. And she looked at me and said, okay, I appreciate you giving me all the other options, but you already made your decision, right? I said, I did. Yeah, long story short, I went back 6 months on unemployment money, and then we managed to raise the first funds from Project A in our pre-seed investment. So that was how we met and what the idea was back then, and everything evolved pretty quickly from there.
Tell me, what was the first breakthrough moment where you realized that ARX would really have a real demand in the market?
When we managed to sell cheated prototypes, like not even ready prototypes. We did like prototypes, fast prototyping, no money, and people got interested in that, right? And this is when you get, okay, we are onto something. And then you move on, first funding, and then you build better prototypes. And then we managed to figure out, okay, the decoy application that we had on top is just one application. The problem we've seen in the armed forces so far was there was only single-use systems, right? And what really is needed on frontlines especially is something that is modular on the fly, that you can change the application more like a Swiss knife approach. And we haven't seen that. And then we managed to pivot the first time really and said, okay, the modularity is one of the key structures that we need to fix for the armed forces. At the same time, we understood that, okay, there is no real process for that from the procurement point of view in the armed forces. So the bet was really big, and we got laughed at quite a lot at the first year, right? Because we were so drastically off what has been there versus what our idea was to front run everything, not waiting until tenders out, just proactively develop something that we figured, okay, this is so far away from status quo that we definitely are onto something.
Could you maybe just, for the listener, describe the product suite of ARX today, just so we have everyone up to speed? What are you building? You started with this, duct tape made gun robot, so to say, decoy robot. But what is it today? What's the product suite?
The product suite is modular ground systems. That means we have ground robotic systems, different sizes. At the moment, we have a particular size, our RCS size. That means 500 kilograms of payload, low to the ground, tracked vehicle, battery powered, 40 kilometers of range, 500 kilograms of payload with autonomy. So that's one of our core products that we have. So that's our autonomy system. What we figured out on the way, that was the second pivot, is, okay, we have a system that can communicate over data, which is quite normal in the robotic world, right? Because this is how you operate with robotic systems. If you bring it into a military environment where most of the equipment is from the 80s, 90s, or 2000s, you can have the best AI in the world, but you can't put the AI in the exhaust. You need something that allows software on the system. So we need to also retrofit existing infrastructure to allow those two systems to communicate. Because at this stage, we have robotic systems. You can communicate over data, mission data, all of that stuff. The robots can go and execute. But on the other hand, you have legacy systems where a poor soldier sits in with a radio waiting for commands to follow, right? And we need to get those two on one level. So the second part of what we do is actually retrofitting and building the capability, software capability for legacy systems to be integrated in this digital layer and also communicate over data. Because going forward, everything will be digital. There will be something, I don't know, you might have played Command and Conquer in the past, right? Where you see all your assets, and we will move to a battle management system going forward that will not look exactly like that, but somewhat similar to what we've had in computer game past.
I'd love to ask you, so Project A have gotten really good at defense and they're known for that. But I'd love to ask you about your experience with VCs in general when it comes to understanding this space, what you're building, the nomenclature, all of this. Are we in a good place when it comes to for generalists to understand what you're doing and actually invest in this stuff? Or do you really need a specialist?
I mean, you don't. The education happened over the last 18 months, I would say. When we raised first funds in 2023, fundraising was quite interesting, right? Because you run into those B2B investors, SaaS investors that ask all the standard questions, but I have no idea about hardware or defense procurement cycles, value of death, all of that stuff, right? So
what's the TAM? Tell me, what's the TAM?
It is that's really an interesting one. You run into people that have no idea how difficult it is to generate revenues, the long value of debt that we have in defense. We spent a lot of time educating people on that, but then the conviction was not really there, right? Because they were too far out of their comfort zones. That was 23. 24 was different. To be fair, we also got lucky because we got oversubscribed on all of our rounds. So we handpicked our investors. And that was always good, right? So our first investor, our board member, like also captain of the German Armed Forces, so he knows what he's talking about. A second investment came from the NATO Innovation Fund, which had really strong signaling. Obviously, our board member there was a major of the US Air Force. So he also understood everything that we were talking about. The difference making here is that people that actually understood what we are building came to site and see it firsthand. And then things clicked. So all of our investors that actually managed to come to site have got really high conviction and managed to invest also. In 2024, second half, and 2025, we have a lot of people being now really well educated about defense procurement cycles. So the VC community picked up quite quickly, but also because there was a need. You can see the change of growth funds and investment funds moving from the US into a European defense tech. So therefore, the opportunity is quite obvious. So therefore, also everybody jumps on the bandwagon and gets educated and try to raise a defense fund, right? So therefore, also the partner you're talking to have way more knowledge now. And this is more like an eye-to-eye conversation now, but everybody knows what we are doing and understands what that means and what the risk involved is. So it got really like a lot better over the last 18 months, I would say.
Tell me, how do you weigh as a founder that has the privilege of being able to pick? So there's always these interesting dynamics. Do you want a big fund with a great name? Do you want someone who's smaller, closer to you, who actually, will probably be there, to whom their investment in you matter meaningfully if you end up bankrupt? How do you think through all of these things? And maybe in addition to this or adding to it, then the defense specialist perspective, because the truth is you end up describing here, while you said, well, they picked up quick, well, they were also captains in the army before.
True, that was true for our first two investments. We have somewhat but a little bit of a romantic relationship with our investors, right? If you don't click, because you go on a long journey with them, right? With board members, and you need to be on the same page when it comes to energy, risk awareness, all of that stuff. Most of the investments actually are based on the partner team, their willingness to commit to high speed, high risk. We always tell people, it's either go big or go home. We have an opportunity here to become one of the new primes in the next 5 years. And the outcome is quite binary. Either we are or we don't, right? So there's no point in trying to build a medium-sized company here. This is not the point of our venture. And people need to understand the business we are in. Finding those partners that are fully on board with the mission and have those funds behind them is one part of the story. Then, of course, you need a little bit of diversity, right? You need really early stage, a good operational fund. Project A was a perfect fit for that. They have a great operational team to help us scale, right? So when I needed a recruiter or something, I could pick somebody I could trust because we're a portfolio company and understood that they were willing to give their best for the company for 6 months of time or so before I managed to hire somebody in-house. So that was great. That was exactly the right thing there. From a signaling point of view, a NATO Innovation Fund, obviously with LPs being the Ministry of Defense in Europe and NATO, was a perfect signaling partner, but also on the partner side, somebody that understood defense and what we're onto. And then with HV Capital and Series A, obviously big fund, massive signaling to the market, but also great partner team, super high energy, willing to drive the business. Those two things always go in balance. And then for me, I always ask him, right, my requirements are, you get out of my way when I'm being fast and try to build a company, but pick up the phone when I need you. Are you willing to do that? And usually if they say, yeah, that's exactly how we operate, we don't try to micromanage our portfolio companies, but rather give them advice if they want advice. But that's about it, right? We don't want to slow you down. We want to allow you to be as quickly as you want to be.
Yeah. Let's get back to, I've obviously given all the investors we have listening in, this topic of how you think about picking investors is, of course, super important to get from a founder like you. I would then love to go back a bit to the nitty-gritty details of ARX, and I'd love to ask if you can give us a real-world example of how your systems are being deployed in Ukraine and elsewhere.
Ukraine is a different beast because Ukraine is in war, therefore war generates chaos. So usually in peacetime, army is a very slow-moving organization, big organization, process changes are super slow. But also the implementation of new processes are usually at a much larger scale. When you live in war, everything breaks down into smaller groups, very dynamic. Therefore, our systems are usually used by a group of 5 to 15 people. What we do is we supply ammunition, food, water to the first trench, and we medevac wounded people from the trench to safety. So this is still part of the kill zone. So this is where when you put your head out of the trench, you're in risk. So therefore, we try to mitigate the risks of losing lives as much as we can by providing logistics support, but also using our systems for medevac operations. The worst thing that can happen to you on the battlefield is get wounded, not getting shot. When you're shot, you're dead. That's not, all of the other people know you're dead. They can focus on staying alive themselves. If you're wounded, they try to help you survive. That means you're not only out of order yourself, but also you take 3 other people with you, or 4, because they need to take care of you. And if you transport a wounded person, that usually takes 4 people. It's quite heavy, depending with all the equipment. And usually in a kill zone, you have 3 to 5 kilometers to walk. So that's a long distance if you have to carry a person. And that's high-risk country because you still have FPV drones, mortar strikes, artillery, all of the bad stuff. So what we try to do here is help people in the trench to focus on their jobs, staying alive, and use our robots to evacuate wounded people, getting them to safety. So that's the main use cases we have in Ukraine. And that's a little bit different from Europe, right? Europe is in peace, functional structures, so innovation is way more structured. So here, there's more technical integrations needed for large area surveillance, unmanned air, unmanned ground teaming. So more technical solutions are wanted here, we are working on, right? Saying that, still the logistics and medevac stuff as basic solution is still wanted, but the implementation here is more technical.
I imagine it's 2 very different machines, and I am sure you learn very different things whether you're working in Ukraine or you're working with the large, slow Danish military.
Yes and no. The point here is what we learn in Ukraine will be the reality if we don't manage to deter the Russians quick enough. As soon as Europe goes to war, we will all end up in garages prepping RC cars with mines. This is the harsh reality we need to face. And therefore, we take all of our lessons learned, all of the quick fixes, the fast prototyping we have in Ukraine, and try to help to voice that message to the European MODs. We need to break with all, not with all, but with most processes we know. The process we know is, okay, we have a problem, then somebody writes up a huge tender of all the requirements they can think of, right? And then a business partner in the industry takes it on and then develops something cost plus for 5 years. So that's our iteration cycle right now. And we do something safety first, 500 safety features, and so on and so forth. And then we use this approach to test our first prototype in Ukraine. And then the Ukrainian lieutenant asks, okay, what's the funny red button you have on the back? I was like, okay, that's my emergency stop, sir. Why do you have that? It's okay, that's German regulations. Okay, that's useless. Take it off. Why is the robot stopping? Yeah, you lost connection to the security, to the safety remote. Oh, why do you have that? So yeah, that's regulations. Okay, that's useless. Take it off. So we had this conversation. We got really like, when we went to Kiev the first time in 2024 early, we got really bloody nose because we came there with our safety first mindset from Europe that we know. That is not how they work. This is too slow. And we need to realize that the process we have are way too slow. If you look at the drone war in Ukraine, everything changes within 2 months. Like you go from normal drones to FPV drones, then fish nets, then wire drones, then electronic warfare. That all changes so quickly. If you tender everything up and wait for the prototype to be delivered, we are always late to the party. That means the only way going forward is to use VC money to front run the development, develop something for the MODs, which is somewhat procurement ready, but it's not TRL9. So technical readiness level 9 is our, high-end, high-tech stuff that we usually produce. We need to go down to maybe TRL6. That means mass producer, not super safe, but completely mission ready. We need to go back from safety first to mission first. And this is something we try to put that narrative onto the European MODs. And that's why working in Ukraine and working in Germany or Denmark is not that different, because we try to tell them what we do here will not work on the battlefield, right? Everything has changed, and you need to realize that. And everybody's struggling to understand because they're stuck in their old processes and try to figure out how to change this. So everybody's working on something, but nobody has found the golden process just yet. So to answer your question, it's not that different, right? We try to figure out what is needed and then adapt quickly to give the customer what the customer wants, get a new data point and go back. But we also use the lesson learned from Ukraine to educate the team in Europe that the way we have done things in the last 20 years will unfortunately not work going forward.
I can imagine that your product would have been radically different had Ukraine not happened, because you wouldn't have had the same cycles as you have had with Ukraine, and then you've been able to adapt rapidly. Am I somewhat correct in saying that?
It probably is, because the reality in Ukraine is so different to what we have in mind.
Because you came with your Afghanistan experience and kind of had that mindset to it, and then you started building, so to say, and then everyone was caught off guard with how the Ukraine war changed everything in terms of what we need.
Yeah, and to be fair, the drone war changed the game. What we figured out, and that was quite obvious, it was one of the key milestones that we had, was, okay, we need to fix lack of mass. Lack of mass is something we have not worked on in Europe at all, right? We produce ammunition, all of that stuff, but a high quantity of lower tech systems that can be deployed at low cost is something we are not used to in NATO, right? We produce high tech systems, low quantity, but very impactful. But those systems will not survive anymore because they are just overwhelmed with lower tech stuff. Lack of mass is something we always had in mind, because nobody's doing working on lack of mass with the European supply chain, because that's super difficult, because European supply chain is more expensive. You try to stay away from Chinese components, which is also difficult because your third and fourth level supply chain will probably end up being Chinese anyways. So this is a major problem we try to tackle. And then Ukraine came along and showed us, okay, we are super late to the party. If we want to do this as Europeans, also with Donald Trump's second term, it was quite obvious that we need to do something for Europe quite quickly. We cannot rely on our US partner and taking a role in the back and hoping that somebody will bail us out. We've done it for the last 20 years. It will not fly going forward.
What would you think, once hopefully the Ukraine war ends soon, someone like you, would you have to seek out, so to say, the next front line to continue your iteration in the real world? Or how will you be
No.
able to manage as a startup without
No,
that?
no, no. Everybody in Europe understands that what we have in Arsenal will not help us. So the goal here is to build the capabilities at scale quick enough to deter any adversary to move into Europe. And this program is kicked off in Germany and all over Europe. So people know what they need to do. So this is all already set in stone and there's no going back to this. So that means I would be more than happy if the war stops today.
Yeah,
We have a great team in Ukraine. We will take a lot of frontline experience to build more systems based on Ukrainian knowledge in Ukraine and also help Ukraine to restock their capabilities. But at the same time, all the processes in Europe are rolling. So for us, we don't need another frontline. Our success will be also defined if we as Europe will be able to deter any adversary moving into the next 5 years.
Do you see ARX? So you said you'd like the dream scenario is you end up becoming one of the new primes. Do you see ARX becoming the next era prime, so to say, meaning that our old primes, is it correct to say that our old primes are a bit stuck in the old method of war, so to say? They have machines built up for that. And it just as any other incumbent in any other industry, it's very hard to get out of. We have it in B2B SaaS right now, everyone trying to get out of their old UI interface into an AI native world. Is it the same when we're now saying that the rules on the war field has completely changed, and thus if you had a huge company set up around building F-35s, it's very, very difficult to change. And for that reason, we're going to have some neo primes or whatever's the word you use that are completely built to build mass, so to say.
I think you're spot on this. What we've seen with the European spending going from below 2% to, now agreed 5%, that doubles the amount, sometimes triples the amount of money spent on defense. That means the old primes will have their hands full just to execute on the order books they have. At the same time, they have been educated by the procurement offices around Europe to stick to the old process, which is, okay, there's a big tender, develop a cost-plus model for 10 years. If this has been working for the last 30 years, they will struggle to move out of that cash cow quick enough. And if that assumption is true, they will not be able to fill that gap that is opening up now, which is unmanned systems. That means companies like Quantum and Stark, like ARX, there's a space that needs to be conquered quickly because the primes will need to focus on producing the mass, on ammunition, on old systems that we still need. That doesn't mean that the old primes will go away. They still will scale, but they will not be able to innovate as fast as we can to fill that neo-prime space. So I believe we will be one of those companies moving into that space, and this is also our mission, to not take any space from the primes away, but to give the MODs additional capabilities for the future.
Yeah, sounds like a pretty classic innovator's dilemma here. Very interesting. Okay, I'd love to ask you, how do you view the dual use potential of your tech outside of defense? Your defense first. Does it make sense? Do you even have it in mind? Disaster relief, logistics, industrial autonomy. Is that something that's on the map for ARX?
It is, but the innovator here in this distribution is defense. So there's the highest need of innovation. So the pain is so high in defense that it's a clearly defense-first market. That said, commercial will follow in the next 24 months. So as soon as we have an understanding of the use cases in defense, which are fully developed and produced at scale, defense market will be only the first to adoption. And then there will be the commercial market as an early adopter for critical infrastructure, all those things where auto robotics will take place and all the autonomous drones will take over. And then you have those late adopters. This is your NGOs. I have a perfect solution for disaster recovery. I have an integration with the Starlink. So whenever there's an earthquake, I have a robot coming in, building a mobile Wi-Fi network. I have a second robot that can follow you with 500 kilograms of your equipment in a follow me mode. You don't need to operate the robot. It will just follow you to the point of, let's say, a house that collapsed. Then you take off all your equipment, send the robot autonomously back, and then you switch the application to a medevac stretcher, start evacuating people, put them on a stretcher, and then the robot can take them to a casualty point or the first point of safety or where you collect your wounded people. So I have that solution. That solution is ready. right? But the innovation pain on NGOs on that is so low that I when you pitch to them, they neither have the idea how to use it. If you tell them, they say they have no time to implement, no process, and they have no drive to implement. So even though I have the solution, the market is not ready for it. So we focus on defense first. We will go through the classical adoption cycle, and that's all fair, but it's a 100% dual-use product.
I guess it's also a bit about with the massive need that there is right now, the opportunity in defense is so big that going to normal industrial production, maybe it's a very different machine and you don't have as clear a value prop, and you have other competitors there as well, where I think that, yeah, interesting. And so it's a lot more, so as you kind of said, in war, chaos arrives, which is kind of the opposite of what you want on a manufacturing floor.
Absolutely. And also single-use robotics, something which is lower tech and higher quantity, is something people are not interested in commercial, right? They want triple
right
safety.
Now we're going the opposite direction.
Triple safety features, so everything's super safe. So which is all fair and fine, but not for now, right? So, and also looking at classical startup problems, overstretching your team by having too many priorities is one of them. So therefore we postponed the commercial entry for now because there's so much opportunity in defense. And this is also where our expertise is. But also we have connections with airports, critical infrastructure providers, security companies, and so on and so forth. So there's an early, feel for the market, but there's so much opportunity in defense. So we try to focus on that for the time being.
Everyone's talking AI these days. How central is it to you guys?
And that's a good VC question always. How do you win the war on autonomy and AI? My usual answer is I don't. What we try to do with solving lack of mass means you need to bring into the area of operation a lot of assets that can be used on a single-use basis in a mission environment. You should be ready to lose the asset. That should be fine, right? You want something that protects the human, not too valuable that the human needs to protect the asset. So therefore, having a limited amount of sensors and also a limited amount of AI is totally fine. So we have all the autonomy features that you expect. We do have unlimited sensors. So nobody has really solved off-road autonomy at high grass and where you need to have super complex sensor fusion. But we do have an autonomy which is totally good enough to do the mission. But we don't go overboard with safety features and things that drive the price to a range where we cannot solve lack of mass. This is the in-between thing we're doing. This is also something we always get questions from VCs. How do we win on AI? And the answer is we don't. We use it to get a mission-ready product, which doesn't mean it's a bad AI. It's just you're trying to not find the holy grail of AI on this.
There are different routes to win, right? If you are solving for lack of mass, you're solving for cost, which means you're obviously not going to be state of the art with complex technology. Makes perfect sense, right? Do people get it? Do you feel that it's a bit uphill?
No, they get it. And to be fair, this is just one part of the portfolio. We also have a partnership with Daimler-Benz Truck where we build a much larger system, and also for the trucks as a retrofit. That's a different beast, right? That's trying to build something which is super safe, and then we go top notch. So then we have multiple sensors, sensor fusion that is then collecting data, going into an algorithm that makes the decisions, which is a completely different beast that we have in the low-tech robots.
I want to ask you a question, which is maybe a weird one and weird time to bring it in now. But as founders, you have a military background. When you're building up the team inside, in what functions are military backgrounds important? Do you see that it is like every function should kind of have someone who at least understands the field? How does this work when you're building a company like this?
I think as a founder team, for us, it makes total sense to have military backgrounds. We connect on that layer a lot. We have this whatever it takes mentality, which unites us. So in the military world, if you have an objective to climb a mountain, it doesn't matter if it's rainy, it doesn't matter how heavy your backpack is, nobody cares, right? You can't you can complain as much as you like, but the objective stays the objective. And we all are really well aware of this, and there's no complaining. So we just do whatever it takes. So this quite relentless approach to executing has been one secret sauce that we have as a founder team, and also decision making. Mark makes being infantry officers. I've been deployed to Afghanistan. So as long as nobody shoots at us, we're still like quite calm under pressure, I would say. So therefore, decision-making is something I think we are pretty good at. So that obviously helps with the military background, right? Everybody who is doing demos with the customer, that means with soldiers, boots on the ground, those people usually have military backgrounds to speak the same language, because obviously German is my language, but military German is a completely different language. We have a ton of acronyms. If you're normal German citizens with no military exposure, you will not understand a lot when somebody is speaking military German. This is the same for all the languages there is, I guess. So having somebody who's able to speak military language helps, obviously, when you have customer-facing interaction. So therefore, those people are usually ex-service member. When it comes to tech, all of the other stuff, you want to have as much diversity as you can to build up that team and not generate a big blind spot. At the same time, what unites us all is Mission Europe. So we all, try to make sure that we are able to live and live with our families in peace as long as we can. And if we can help with that a little bit, that unites us. So this is the mission we are on, and that unites people from all backgrounds, because everybody has the same motivation to work for us. So, and it's a mixed bag. You need people that speak military language. They need to have military background, because people in the armed forces will figure out quite quickly if you have served the armed forces or not. So therefore, no BS on that side. But for all the other functions, you want to go as diverse as possible to make sure you build a well-balanced organization.
Yeah. It's just super interesting. I can imagine that it is very hard as a salesperson in this field if you don't have a background. Both, I imagine, for social reasons / so it's one thing, you can learn many things, but there's also there's something around, have you done it? Am I right in saying that there's a camaraderie and acceptance and understanding that you belong
100%.
here?
If you tell people, like, I spent 6 months in Afghanistan, and you have many people now that are battalion commanders and lieutenant colonels, full colonels, that have served the same time. So it immediately builds a connection, because that has been intense time back then in Afghanistan. So that obviously breaks the ice completely. But at the same time, what you also need is a technical understanding. So, ideally you need an officer that is trained in technical situations and a leader in technical situations, because we are super early stage. I give an example. If I show up with my system at a random military unit, they have 0 processes for a robotic system in their current process structure. So whenever I go to mech infantry battalion and say, okay, ta-da, this is the robot, they say, the battalion commander says, I don't know how to use it. I don't know what the new process should look like. And then you need to tell them a little bit, okay, back from a technical standpoint, you have a big downtime when you shoot a mortar system. You need to go back and restock for ammunition. That usually takes 45 minutes. If I use the robot to bring you the ammunition to your second position, this downtime will be reduced by 60 to 75%. That means your downtime of this weapon system reduces by roughly 60 to 75%. And then it starts clicking and say, oh, keep talking. Now I'm hearing you. This is now the moment where we go from old process, old structure, old procurement, to defining the new process, which then drives new structure where unmanned systems are part of it, robotic systems are part of it, and then this drives new procurement. So this is the cycle we are in. So without having that knowledge, you will not be able to educate, because beforehand, we were waiting for the battalion commander to say, snap, I have a long downtime on my system to restock. I need a solution for that. And then they write up a whole tender, and then the industry will come up with a solution. We are front running all of that stuff. That also means we are coming to a partner that has no idea what to do with the system. So therefore, it makes sense for us having technical knowledge and educating the customer.
The European defense tech ecosystem, we spoke a bit about it, but I'd love to ask you, you sound hopeful to me, but what makes you hopeful? Where are you seeing that things are working?
The acceptance begins to rise. You can see it in the VC world, talking to the LPs, the government-backed funds changing their policies from dual use to defense now, weapons being allowed. So we are opening up step by step our LP and VC structure to invest more into those developments. That's something which is ongoing. It's still quite early stage, I would say. It takes a little bit of time to set up new funds, which are more defense focused. So that's one part of the story. At the same time, you can see also growth funds being established in Europe for exactly that. In 2023, when you raised Series A in defense, you needed to go to the US, right? There was pretty much no way around it. And now the step-by-step changes as also growth money is coming into Europe. So that sets the framework for innovation. The second thing is the general acceptance of defense being part of a society that wants to remain status quo, which we've pretty much forgot. So the acceptance here is also changing. So that also makes me hopeful. And the last bit would be that there's a whole ecosystem of people that want to make a change, right? And they're not in for the money. We have people that really get out of the bed in the morning because they want to help to innovate. And I think looking at past innovations, most of the things that we're using from helicopters and so on, they've first been used in the armed forces. So I think there's a good chance that we find something in Europe that hopefully can make its way into mainstream and make all of our lives also better from a commercial point of day-to-day use and so on. What I'm still struggling with, obviously, I've been to the European Commission on Monday, Tuesday. We still live in a world of paper. So getting consent on the European level is somewhat difficult still, I would say. And changing the frameworks here, it's a much bigger mountain to climb. If you talk to US investors especially, their sentiment is, okay, European market is super fragmented. You drive 5 hours by car, different rule sets, different paperwork, a lot of bureaucracy. So being a European champion is pretty much mission impossible. So, we'd rather stay in the US. So, we need to change that somehow, that we are able to build European champions in this new world. And this is something that, somewhat worries me, but it's also fine because we're early stage. We just need to make sure we address the problem constantly and work on it. European legislation, same for procurement. When you talk ships, this is a tanker, right? It's moving slowly in one direction. And now we figured out, okay, we need to change course and quite quickly, and we can't. The good thing here is that Europe already did the right thing, but putting some speedboats in the water. That means aside from the procurement agencies, there are innovation hubs that are now equipped with money that are able to procure. So your value of death is not 10 years, but it's somewhat manageable. So there's a lot of good things happening. We haven't found the perfect wages yet, but things are moving, and this is more than we could have asked for 5 years ago. So I think the development is good. Is it quick enough? No, but it's going, and that's a good thing.
Before we close, one question. You've been in the Army ages ago, I was about to say, which means that you've carried the military background and journey with you, the flag on your shoulder, so to say. Am I right in saying that there's been a much needed shift in public perception of what it is to be in defense, both as a person in the Army, but also someone building for the Army?
Yes, and especially in Germany, because we being proud to be in the armed forces, somewhat we haven't back-to-back World War starters and World War losers is not a great track record, to be honest. And this is something you want to stay away from as far as we can. But at the same time, contributing to all the NATO requirements we have, all the things we have done for our NATO allies. This is all good stuff. And this is something that helps us staying safe in Europe. And we had our first Veterans Day a couple of weeks ago. So we step-by-step changing the perception of our armed forces, and we need to get more of that. I've been to the Veterans Day in Copenhagen a couple of weeks back, and this is a whole different perception, right? The acceptance of armed forces anywhere else in the world is much higher, and I appreciate that war sucks. I completely agree, but unfortunately, peace comes from a point of strength, and we need to be able to build that muscle to tell people, all right, do not mess with Europe. We got this. Having this conversation on a broader level, also in society, it makes total sense. And step by step, we are getting there, but it needs to be understood that we need to build strength in Europe again.
Yeah. From my side, at least, thank you so much for having both spent the time in the uniform and now in the trenches building as a founder. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Andreas. That's been fun.
Stefan, you're amazing. Before we start the show, a quick note. If you're building or running a fund, you know it takes the right partners. At EUVC, we only work with sponsors we truly believe should be part of your tech stack. Please do take a moment to hear about them. And if you do, reach out, mention EUVC. It's the best way you can support what we do. Thank you so much. First up, Ace Alternatives. Every fund manager needs clean operations behind the scenes. From fund admin to tax and compliance, Ace handles it all across VC, PE, private debt, and real assets. They're trusted by some of the best investors in the world, and if you want peace of mind, and a scale-ready back office should be part of your stack. Finding deals and managing your portfolio is at the heart of running a fund. Synaptic helps you discover startups before others do, and Portfolio IQ keeps your portfolio data sharp and ready for LPs. Together, they're essential tools for modern fund managers. When it comes to legal, you need a team that truly knows venture. Haynes Boone supports LPs, GPs, startups, and scale-ups across the full fund lifecycle. Smart managers make Haynes Boone part of their stack. We have two at EUVC. Tech Barbecue. Oh my God, who doesn't love barbecue? Europe's startup scene meets the loudest, friendliest family reunion ever at Tech Barbecue. From Nordic founders to global VCs, this is where ideas catch fire and relationships get real. If you're building or backing in Europe, Tech Barbecue is where you want to show up. And hey, if you've got a big fun announcement coming up, want to hit the headlines, or just want to tell your story out, do reach out to us because we'd love to help. And we've got some killer partners to help you get in the right media places. They've helped us land Bloomberg, CNBC, Financial Times, Forbes, and many more for the EUVC Summit, and we'd love to do the same for you.
This was their finest hour.
Tear down this wall.
It's more than just an alliance. This is a union of values.
Let's start acting.